Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the annual meeting of the members of Pinehurst Country Club. I hope you don't mind. My clock says it is a couple minutes early. I've traditionally liked to start a couple minutes early because we might be able to get done a couple minutes early. So I'd like to call this meeting of the members to order. And I want to start the meeting this evening with some introductions. And I want to introduce the 2015, this past year, members of the Board of Governors of Pinehurst Country Club. First person I'd like to introduce is Mary Pappas, our Vice President. Mary? Hold your applause. Hold your applause. Board members, Jay Carruthers. Vicki Hancock, Nancy Heilman, Jim Kazmarek, Howard Schwartz, Stephanie Stokes, Ed Renner, and Pat Hagan. Pat. Those are the 11 members of the Board of Governors. I'm sorry, I've got him on the list. Gary Stroh, our golf committee chair. Gary? You can sure tell who's got the biggest fan club. Then, along with that, I was going to also introduce the 2016 Board of Governors, announcing the winners from the recent election that we had that ended November 30th. And the introductions of that board would be exactly the same board that I just introduced. Those that got reelected were Mary Pappas, Jay Carruthers, and Stephanie Stokes. Congratulations to those people for a new 3-year term. Now, the Board of Governors did meet at 5 p.m. this evening, and we elected officers for the 2016 year. And the new officers are, for President of the Board of Governors, Mary Pappas. Mary? For Vice President, the board elected Gary Stroh. And Ed Renner and Pat Hagan have agreed to serve as our treasurer and secretary for the coming year. They do just a very marvelous job. Okay, in keeping with wanting to move along, I'd like to call on our Vice President, Mary Pappas, and have her come and share with you some of the highlights of our year, this past year, and how we've chosen to make that information available to you. Mary.
Well, I am Mary Pappas. And before I get into a very brief little talk, I want to thank all of you who supported the incumbent 3 governors. Enjoying the confidence that you have in us, we really appreciate the fact that you reelected us, and we're going to do everything we can to be your liaison. We welcome any comments, questions, suggestions, etc. But now, to keep things moving along, I hope all of you did pick up this wonderful back and front flyer. Instead of having to have 50 slides and 30 minutes, it's all condensed in a wonderful little piece of information. It tells all the accomplishments of both the board and all of the committees for 2015. And our communications committee is the one that put this together, so we are very appreciative of that. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is the communication that we have now. I think over the last 3 years as I've been on the board, it has improved year after year after year. First, Jay Carruthers was the chair of that committee. Now Vicki Hancock is the chair of that committee. And the management and Pinehurst have spent endless hours and money to put together a really fantastic website. You get the member minute, the memorabilia, and if you have questions, most of the time you can just go to the website, maneuver your way through because there's so much information that it had been redone and sliced and diced. But if you really want to know what the board does, if you go to the upper left-hand corner and do your pull down, you'll see a little tab that says Board of Governors. And there you could find our mission statement, which again is that we are your liaison. And we hope that you come to us with questions, anything that is bothering you, rather than just talking to your neighbor and that wonderful Pinehurst rumor mill that we have. It's so much more productive if you contact any committee member, the vice president, or myself, and either email, telephone call. You'll find all of our contact information on there. Also, all of the committees meet once a month. The board meets once a month, and it is our goal to have the minutes out and on the website as quickly as possible, so you can always find out what we're doing. And so with that, I am finished for that portion, which brings us into something that we like to do, which is a special recognition award. And this is an award that we give to a member that we feel has done above and beyond for the other members of the club, volunteering in a host of different areas, whether it be golf or house or tennis or lawn bowling, whatever. A couple of years ago, we had pickleball, and those people that brought pickleball to Pinehurst Country Club, which has really made an outstanding inroad, they were recognized. This year, we couldn't decide on one person, so we're going to recognize two. The first person has been very instrumental in the golf area. Before that, she was on the Board of Governors. She was a president for 2 years. She brought Tar Heels to the 7-9 membership. She's done so many things, I can't even remember all of them. And most people do know her. She works tirelessly for the club, a great leader, and that would be Diana Staley. Maybe you've never seen it because it doesn't really have a prominent spot, but we are hoping to move that. There is a plaque downstairs, and I believe this award started in 2007 or 8, and the names are on it, and then we do give them a small gift of gratitude. If you remember, a couple of years ago, Pinehurst decided to purchase National. And that was a huge undertaking, both from a member perspective, management perspective, and it took a lot of meetings. The second person we'd like to recognize always said, I don't want to be a leader. I really like to just do what anybody tells me to do. So one year I suggested to the president of Number 7 at that time that this person would really be a great asset on the social committee. Next thing I know, she's running the social committee, and that was just phenomenal. And then, for whatever reason, whether she had her hands twisted or she wanted to do it, she became the president of the 7 board. And that was during the time that we were undertaking this merging of the two clubs. And believe me, with the two boards, all the things that went through that, it really took somebody with a very even keel personality to undertake that endeavor. And that would be Lisa Carruthers. And now I'll turn it back over to Merle.
One of the things that we've tried to do with our meeting this year is kind of change the format up a little bit. And the idea is to try and give you, as members, as much information of the things that the board is doing, the things that the board is working on. And you'll see many of those in this little handout that we've given you. We will have copies available for those that didn't make it this evening down at the receptionist desk in the foyer area. And this will also be available online. But I think each one of the committees have done a great job of trying to summarize their information, and they will be starting over in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks to work on putting that together for 2016. But one of the things that we wanted to put some emphasis to was the idea of giving each of you a better feel for what's happening at our club. And so last year we devoted the program to try and lay out just over a 3-year period what had changed over that 3-year period. Now I know that there's some of you that are just like me. I like things just the way they were. Okay? But there was a lot of things that have changed. You look around, and many of you have been here much longer than I've been here. You can notice so many of those things. So we tend to see those things as we come to the club day by day. But one of the things maybe we don't have a real good perspective of is what has been driving those changes. What was behind making those changes at Pinehurst Country Club? And as we start looking a little bit deeper, we'll find that there is an environment out there today in the world, in our world, that is driving a lot of these things. And so as I was visiting with this kind of concept with Jay Biggs, Jay suggested that, look, I want to tell you a little bit about where we get a lot of our information from that we take in terms of formulating our plans and recommendations to Mr. Dedman. And one of the key people that is involved in that has been involved in that for over 30 years in this country. And he's been involved in the club business. And interestingly enough, that same individual has been involved with Pinehurst Country Club ever since 1984. He continues with a wide variety of positions. You saw those in the announcement that we had in the member minute, but he continues to advise Pinehurst Country Club on the strategic and operational matters that it looks at as it goes forward, all with the idea of how can we make this a better place, a better value for both you and me as members, and also for members that we hope that will come and join us as we move along. The individual I'm talking about is Frank Gore. Frank has a long background with the club industry and with Club Corps, and I think let's get on to listening to the great things that he's going to tell us that maybe you never knew. Frank, please come up.
Well, from my standpoint, you made a dramatic upgrade to president over the prior president. I mean, she's half his age. I'm hoping America does as well in replacing the president, as you all have done. Actually, he was wrong. I've been in the business for 50 years. I started when I was 16, so you can do the math. And I've been coming to Pinehurst since the 80s. And when I get to that little circle there, whether I turn left to come to the club or turn right to go to the Carolina, my heart still skips a beat or two after all these years. It's an incredible place. To think that I get to come here as often as I have, you get to live here, and millions of people have on their bucket list to come to Pinehurst that never have been, and it's still an honor for me every time I come, and so it's special to be here. My first introduction to private clubs started when I was a boy. My folks lived on the 13th green at Diablo Country Club. Diablo Country Club was founded in 1914, and we were on the 13th green, and it was a 220-yard par 3, and we were on the right side of the green with a little creek in our backyard, and so everybody was slicing balls into our yard every day. So every day I'd go out to the creek in the yard and pick up the balls, wash them off, and on Saturday and Sunday I'd set up a little stand on the course and sell them back. Then I expanded my business to a lemonade stand, and was doing pretty well as a 9-year-old until one day the mean old club manager came to visit me and said that I was costing him money at the snack bar and in the golf shop. So he offered to buy me out. So in 1958 or 9, $25 for a 9-year-old was a lot of money. So I sold my business for $25. But I reserved the right to stripe the balls and sell them to the driving range. And I did that for the next 10 years, and that's how I bought my first car. When I was 11, my dad took me to the Sutter Club. It's a club in Sacramento, a downtown club. Every governor of California, except one, has been a member of the Sutter Club, which was founded in 1889. I think it's the second oldest club in California. And oh my goodness, I hadn't seen anything like that. It was amazing. I was so taken by it to see this club. It had no golf course. It just was a city club, but it had all this history and all these famous people and all these events, and it just was an amazing place, and it really had an impact on me. And then later that year, I went to the Olympic Club, which is the downtown club, not the country club. It's the same club, but they have two locations. The downtown club is actually older than the country club. The downtown club was founded in 1860. The country club wasn't founded until 1922. It's more famous because it's had U.S. Opens, but actually more Olympic athletes have been trained at the Olympic Club than any other place in the United States, still to this day. And so they were having an Olympic tryout for boxing, and I got to go see that at the Olympic Club. So now I see the Sutter Club and the Olympic Club, and the club's got me now for the rest of my life. And so every vacation I've ever taken in my life, whether business, travel, the clubs that I worked at, the clubs that I did consulting on, I have visited. Last year I visited my 4,000th club. Now, I don't know if that's more than anybody, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And then I really like clubs that are 100 years old. And a lot of clubs, when they get to 75 or 100, they write a book about them. I have 384 of those books. Again, I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's also a lot, according to my wife, who doesn't like me to take up all that space, but it's kind of one of my favorite things. So I've seen a lot of clubs, and I really wanted to study the history of clubs. And the very first club that I could find that ever existed in the world was in the 1600s in London, and it was called White's. And at the time, and still is today, in London, the drink of the day was tea. But they had just introduced coffee. And it became this sensation all over London, and this fellow named White opened up a coffee shop, White's Coffee Shop, which is still there today, by the way. But his problem was people would come in and kind of nurse a cup of coffee all day, and he couldn't make any money. So he decided to charge a cover charge. So first he started by the hour, and then by a half a day, and then by a day, and then by a week, and next thing you know, by the month. That was the first dues model ever introduced. He later added food, and then he added entertainment and games, and he did really well for himself. So that's why today, if you visit any country that's been colonized by the British, they have lots of clubs. America, Canada, Australia. You go to countries that the French colonized, hardly any clubs, or Spain. And still today, if you go to France, hardly any clubs in France. They never really embraced the club model. So I spent most of my life kind of studying clubs and trying to learn a little more about them. And then I had an interesting thing happen. On my 30th anniversary with Club Corp, I retired. But my wife said that we got married for life, but not for lunch. And she said that I wasn't going to stay home and boss her around all day. She didn't sign up for that, so she says, like, go do something. Plus, she didn't want to stop spending money either. And when you don't work, you don't make any money. So I decided to do some consulting, and one of the dreams that I had was no one has ever rated private clubs before. Kind of like Forbes rates hotels, like a 5-star hotel and those kind of things. But no one's ever done that for clubs. And so I decided that I would figure that out. There we go. So I created the Distinguished Clubs of the World program. And I was by invitation only, and I do city clubs, country clubs, yacht clubs, golf clubs around the country. And in the last 38 months, we've done 251 clubs. But I wanted to do it different than what the hotels were doing. The hotels were doing it more about the amenities. You know, like the room had to be so many square feet, the bathroom had to be so many square feet, certain amenities had to be in the bathroom, certain thread count in the sheets. All those things kind of go into whether or not it's a 5-star or not. But I wanted it to be more about the member experience. So I designed this formula, and I wrote 600 questions and an algorithm of how to score them. And this is the formula that I came up with. And the formula is member experience, ME, equals FQ, which is facility quality, and that's easy to understand. That's the buildings, the clubhouse, those kind of things. Add that to the product quality, or PQ, and that's the greens, the food, the product that you sell. That's the second piece. The middle piece is GQ, not the magazine. That's governance quality. You know, how involved is the board and the committees? How much do they really help? How much they participate? Add that to SQ, which is service quality. And you know, if you've ever gone to any great resort, great restaurant, hotel, what you remember most is the quality of the personalized service. That's what really makes it special. But then the last one is the most important one of all, and that's IQ, intangible quality. And I'll explain that in a minute. So in my algorithm, I weight these. The FQ is weighted about 10% of the scoring only, which kind of surprises some people. PQ is about 15%, GQ is about 20%, SQ is about 25% approximately, and IQ is 30%. And IQ is kind of where you get the bonus points. And IQ includes history, traditions, customs. It's hard to put your finger on it, but you kind of know that it's there once you see it, these kind of special, unique places. You have tremendous IQ at Pinehurst, for example. I've had the great privilege of playing Augusta a few times. Actually stayed in a cabin one night as a guest. Pretty nice, but their clubhouse is very modest. Their FQ isn't very good, but their IQ is off the friggin' map. You can't get any more IQ than Augusta National, you know. All the legends about what it really costs and who's really a member and all those things. It has tremendous IQ. My college roommate was the caddy master at Cypress Point and just retired after 30 years. So every November I would go there and spend some time. Their golf shop, if you've ever been to Cypress, you would sue if you had a golf shop like that. It's like a little lean-to. It's a modular building. It's really small. Next to the cash register, they have cashmere sweaters still in the wrappers next to candy bars and cigars. The showers still have plastic shower curtains, not even with the cool curved rods. They don't even have those, you know. But again, their IQ is off the map. You know, it's just amazing. So that's how my formula. So I've been going around the country surveying clubs. Takes about 6 hours. We interview each department head. We score the club, and then I do a written report to establish these clubs. And to my surprise, now some of these headhunters are asking, say, we want to hire a new manager, but we want them to have managed a distinguished club of the world, which is, so Emerald Club is the top 5% of all clubs in the country, and gold clubs are the top 10. You are an Emerald Club, which is in this top 5. And here's a short list of the 251 clubs. I'm sure you've heard of some of these places: Oakmont Country Club, Monterey Peninsula, Olympic Club, Westchester, Montclair, Marion, Old Marsh, Ocean Reef, Frenchman's Creek Beach and Country Club, Greenwich Country Club, East Lake, New York Athletic Club, St. Francis Yacht Club, and of course, Pinehurst Country Club in that same list, which you should be very impressed to be mentioned in the same list of those clubs. Those are special clubs. And so it's my honor to be here today at a distinguished Emerald Club that was just recently renewed in the second survey that we did. So what's happening in the state of the industry of private clubs? And so as I see these clubs, what hasn't been working for quite a while is the totally golf-centric only club, okay? Which was great. In fact, the model has worked almost for 100 years without having to change much. The all-you-can model, all the golf you can play, all the tennis you can play, that model has worked for almost 100 years. Starting in about 1995, way before the Great Recession, which everybody's blaming everything on, like in 2008, but the trouble in the golf industry started way before the Great Recession, because golf hasn't grown in almost 15 years. In fact, it's actually gone down some. When they talk about growing, that's new users versus people that have left the game. It hasn't grown. And so clubs started struggling in the late 90s and around 2000 for lots of different reasons. A lot of changes happened also after 9/11. People's values changed. We used to have a lot of what we call club collectors. People were members of 8, 9, 10 clubs. One of the biggest changes that I've seen in my lifetime is people will no longer pay for something they don't use. And that's a big change in values. A lot of people, and it really is not they can't afford it, they just don't want to do that anymore. They've changed their values. And so the number one reason people usually leave clubs is non-use. And so you have to find ways to get the people to use the club more if you expect them to stay. And so as I've traveled around, I've been coaching clubs of what to do to change that, you know, and what kind of amenities do you have to add to change it. Now, there's some golf clubs they're not ever going to have a problem. Marion's going to do fine for all of its life, and so is Augusta. They're probably not going to have to add any swimming pool at Augusta, probably. Of course, when you have the Masters paying all the bills, that's pretty nice too. But what we're finding is that the clubs that are really doing well have kind of added some new amenities like pools. Pickleball, fastest growing thing in private clubs in the last 3 years. Next thing right behind that, bocce ball. Two things that you would never even thought of 20 years ago, you know, for sure. And then, of course, all of this food and beverage thing about a variety of food and beverage. You know, the white jacket Saturday night, Friday night thing has been gone for a long time in most clubs. They want more casual dining. They want outdoor dining. They want fire pits. All these things are what making clubs more what I call relevant. And the clubs that have not become more relevant are in lots of trouble. And you've done an amazing job with becoming more relevant. A lot of people say, well, what's the best this, and what's the best this, and what's the best that you've seen in all these clubs? And it's really hard to come up with the best. But what I do know that's irrefutable is for value, there's no greater value at any club in the country